Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another session of Tech Talk with Tech Jaws Fair. And I'm your host, Tripta Sinha. And today we're joined by a very special guest, Mr. Christian Wastlhuber. So he has a multiple year of expertise in recruiting, internationalization, and hypergrowth with a strong focus on candidate experience. He has scaled up and diversified recruiting teams, enable everybody to grow and focus on their strength. So, thank you for joining us today, Christian. Welcome, and how are you feeling? And how are you?
Hi there, Trippy. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited, and I can't wait to dive into the topic and tell you a bit more about recruiting, data-driven recruiting, and hopefully I can, help people a bit on how to navigate that in Germany.
Yes, definitely. So we are very thrilled to have you today. And to all our viewers, today's session is all about finding tech talent in Germany. It's a practical guide to data driven recruiting. And to all our job seekers viewers, please be seated. Don't go anywhere because you are going to get like a very different insight of, job findings and everything because you're going to get insight from the other side of the table, right? So, but before we dive into the matter and start with our conversation, let's take a moment, Christian, to uncover your journey. So, if you could just share your inspiring journey with us.
Sure, I can tell you a bit more about that. To have a fun start, right? I'm not a recruiter by training, right? I studied Egyptology and then by pure chance dived into the recruiting business. And well, here I am, right? Over the past, let's say, 8 years, I really focused more on the tech space. Starting with a quite short stint at the company builder of Allianz Group. So back then, we really kind of developed startup ideas, tried to scale them, killed them if they didn't work, and finalized the other ones. And that was my first big exposure to tech and also to the startup space. And somehow I couldn't get away from that anymore. And after that, I was working for several companies, all in the tech space, all with a strong focus on engineering. And back then also my journey started when it comes to scaling teams, recruiting not only locally but on a global level, and that's also when I started looking into data-driven recruiting. I was one of those folks saying, "Well, I know what's happening, right? I have a feeling, my gut feeling is telling me everything." After a while, it doesn't work, right? You cannot tell your CEO, "Sorry, I have a feeling it's gonna work." No, that's not happening, right? So I started into data-driven recruiting, and it helps. It really helps. I've done that in several companies now. Now I'm running with my own company, helping much more companies getting there when it comes to data-driven recruiting and some other people and culture topics. And that's it in a nutshell.
Amazing. So, I have amazing questions lined up for you because we want to know, what exactly it's in there, like the data driven recruitment. But before we start, if you could just, highlight the what exactly is a data driven recruiting?
Yeah. Data-driven recruiting is a lot and nothing, to be very honest, right? In the end, it helps you forecast success if you do it properly. If you have enough data points in place, if you know where to look, a data-driven recruiting approach will help you forecast how long it's going to take you to hire a specific person for a specific team. That's the endpoint, right? That's super far in the future for almost all organizations. In the short to mid run, it helps you evaluate performance. Am I doing a good job? Am I doing the right thing? Am I fast enough? Do I lose people throughout the funnel, throughout the process? Everything that you kind of think you know is usually a bit different when you take a look at the data, because then you see, oh, I'm losing much more people during the process than I thought. My offers are not accepted. I know now why. So those are all data points you have to collect, you have to store, and then see what the complete picture looks like. And that's, for me, data-driven recruiting. The important thing is to get it started and start collecting data, because if you don't, you will never get there.
Right. So, what data is important for this, data-driven approach?
I like that question. Everything. I have to be a bit more precise, specifically in Europe, everything that you're legally allowed to collect. We have GDPR, we cannot store personal data for an extended period of time, and you don't need that information, right? But you can get specific data points on all candidates that you have in the process. You can store some specific skills they are having, experience level, where they are located, salary expectations. You can also then add additional data points in terms of, let's say, availability. If you recruit from outside of Germany, notice period is much shorter. You can store, and you should save data then on visa requirements. How long would it take us to move a person from India to Germany? How much does it cost? And all of those small bits and pieces will allow you to continuously improve your view on the market, so to say. You can then really tell, I hired 2 similar roles in the past 6 months. I know I found that person in whatever, Bulgaria. It took us 3 weeks throughout the process. You can expect that salary expectations and everything. That's the forecasting piece. And on the other hand, when it really comes to the process itself, you need to store, you need to save data on where does that specific person come from. Is it a direct search candidate? Is it an applicant? Which platform? How long did the person stay in each stage? How many interviews did we do? What's the outcome of the interview? Which questions did we ask? And so on, so that you can really tell, I have whatever at the top of the funnel, it's 100 people. Out of those 100 people, for a specific role, I will only speak to whatever 15 in the initial phone call. Out of those 15, we can move 10-ish into the first interview round, 8 make it into second interview round, or 7, and then you still have 4 people you want to make an offer to. Those numbers you also need to have. You need to have readily available, for several reasons, reporting, but also checking health of your funnel. Am I doing a good job? Do I have the right criteria at the beginning of the recruiting funnel? And the right questions I'm asking to really fill the pipeline in a way that we can hire the perfect fitting person then at the very end. And it's also super important to have all of those data points there in case you finally hired someone and then figure out, oh my God, it's not as good as we hoped for, right? There are some bits and pieces missing. There are topics we see now are not working the way we think or we thought they would. And then you also need to look back and see, actually, did we check that candidate on the tasks he's not performing good at? Because if we did not check, it's our fault, right? And we cannot blame the candidate. We did not do a proper recruiting process, and so on. So it's a lot, but overall, it's important to really create as much data points as possible, and you don't need to have them structured if you have the right tools. You need to have them somewhere, right? And
Yeah.
then just use your ATS or any data visualization tool like Tableau or Power BI to really get deep insights into what you're doing.
Nice. So, when you talk about this process of, taking data of each and every bits and all the important aspects from
Mhm.
the candidates who are applying for the jobs. So, does this happen after you have received the applications, or, is it included in the process of applying for the job?
Some pieces are hopefully put automatically into the system, like channel, interview date, and all of that
Yeah.
stuff. But depending also on the tool, you need to add some bits and pieces later. You also need to be aware of that in certain countries, you actually are not allowed to ask for the salary expectations for the current salary, but you can ask for salary expectations. And so it's not a one solution fits all thing. You really need to customize it to the specific area, to the also to the role, because for some roles you need to know different things in comparison to, let's say, engineering. But it's right now it's a mix of automated stuff and some manual things you have to do as well when you write your interview evaluation, forecast, whatever you call it. You also then need to create, for instance, tags or specific keywords within your tool to be able to get that data out again.
Right. So, from a job seekers,
Mm.
perspective, so do what are the things that they need to keep in mind in order to get noticed, from the tools that takes data out, and maybe
Yeah.
whether they are not a
Mm.
ideal candidate for that particular job role.
Yeah, that's a good question. I've been part of several discussions here, right? So overall, tools do not decide whether you move forward with a person or not. So whatever you do, just make the font size readable on a screen. I guess that's the only real thing you need to do, and make sure that you actually have the job that you're applying for more or less mirrored on your CV. Doesn't need to be the same, but if I'm looking for a Java engineer, there should be Java somewhere, and probably not at a university project 10 years ago, but on the daily job.
Yeah.
And that's all, right? So there is no, because it's always people reading the CV. It's always a recruiter who is actually screening CVs. And here, again, the most important thing is make it readable. That's the only thing. Don't use fancy fonts. Just make it, let's say, whatever. Times
Yeah.
New Roman 12 point, period. That's all we need.
I think this particular thing has to be highlighted. Roman 12 point. They can just take like the snap of it and make sure like they just go and edit their resumes already. Great. So, what do you think about the how can you ensure like they're like high quality hires with
Mm,
good candidate focus through this method? If I am correct,
mm.
if it's a method, the data driven
It's
recruiting.
it's not a method. It's for me it's a framework, right? But the data-driven approach ends. It doesn't end, but it's a bit limited. So if you really want to make sure you hire the most suitable person for a specific job, you need to do much more. You need to be super clear on the expectations. So whom do we need in terms of technical skills? Whom do we need in terms of, let's say, social skills? What kind of personality do we need in the team? That's important to be aware of at the very beginning. And then you need to structure your recruiting process accordingly. You need to define the right questions. You need to define the right, let's call it, challenge that needs to be done. I'm a huge fan of doing a challenge for each and every recruiting process. So could be a coding challenge, can be whatever. The higher you get, if you're recruiting for a senior leadership person or a C-level, those folks need to kind of facilitate a bigger workshop, right? But it's always something that is showing the actual skills of the person and how that person is able to utilize their knowledge towards the goal that we want to reach. That needs to be super structured and in a way data driven as well, because you cannot ask different questions to different candidates, because that will obfuscate the result. You need to have the same questions for all candidates. You need to have the same challenges for all candidates for the same role, because only then you can take then again an objective data driven decision, because that person kind of sounds bad, ticked all the boxes. We do not tick boxes, but we have questions and we want them answered. And that's in itself, let's say, data-driven as well, because you always ask the same questions.
Right. So some standard protocols that you need to follow in order to, have get data from different candidates on the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Nice. That's nice. So, do you think that there's any influence of our very important rock star that's in the world, AI?
Yeah, yes and no.
Related to this as well.
There will be a bigger impact. Right now, basically, what we get is the same thing that people have been speaking about for the past 4 years, 5 years. Now it's called AI. Back then it was machine learning. In the end, in recruiting, you get support when it comes to those administrative tasks. So scheduling interviews, all of that can be taken over by a tool. Right now it's called an artificial intelligence. It's still machine learning and automation, right? But that's the biggest impact. And honestly, as a recruiter, I don't care if the CV is written by ChatGPT, because if it's written good, I might speak to that person. If there is a gap between what I read and what the person can do, well, that it's not good, right? So the benefit of faking a CV or having it written too positively by AI will backfire quite soon, because as soon as you kind of remove the paper and have a conversation, that will be quite obvious. So it doesn't make sense. It's the same the other way around. We could write super fancy job descriptions, job ads using ChatGPT, but we cannot maintain that image for quite long, right? If you have a boring product and if you're boring people, it will show in the interview. So there is no big overlap right now. In the future, it might be different, but we are very far away from that. And we are even further away from AI deciding on whom to move forward in the process and whom not. That is right now still 100% done by humans, and most likely it will stay like that for the next, let's say, 2 3 years, because humans also can read between the lines. Humans can distinguish between different backgrounds, because, well,
Yes.
a CV from Germany looks completely different to a CV from from France, and it's just the next country.
Yeah.
And then US CVs look different again. And if you don't know that, you might reject a German candidate because Germans do not speak about their results. They speak about what they did and not about the outcome. Whereas English speak about their results and not how they did it.
Yeah.
So you might miss some keywords in the German CV. So that's one thing, and I guess AI will help us. It will increase speed, probably. It will also increase fanciness of stuff, but it will not replace a proper interview. It will not be able to replace a doing a presentation in front of your potential new colleagues and really interacting with them. That will always be driven by humans.
Right, because there's always a scope, of building rapport between like the employers and the employees. So I think that
Mm,
cannot be replaced by a machine. But however, like you as a recruiter, you get hundreds of resumes and applications.
mm,
I think just on LinkedIn, and there will be multiple other platforms that
mm,
you're advertising your job. So I guess, yeah, even hundreds and thousands of resumes that you get. So do you actually go through each one of them, or like, because there's like system nowadays like the ATS in place, where the keywords of the CVs that have matches the job description
mm,
keywords get shortlisted by the system, and then maybe the recruiter goes through the shortlisted ones. Like, how does it work?
mm. So basically, right now, we go through all applications. There are tools that do some kind of ranking, but they are not working properly. So you have to go through all applications anyway, to really see whether those CVs or those candidates are a fit for the company. And honestly, again, we are recruiting in the global world. So basically, some people do not use the keywords that I put into the tool or that I might expect initially when I started the search. So I have to go through those CVs anyway and see whether they can do the job or not. And if it's just down to counting the amount of words that kind of are the keyword, it doesn't help, because then people will just put in Java 25 times in a CV so that they get listed. And if they try to beat a non-existing system, they will beat themselves again. So it doesn't work. People screen CVs, people reject, and people move people forward. So no magic AI deciding whom to interview or not.
That's good to hear. So, how can you ensure like an objective evaluation in the global talent market?
Yeah, that's something I already mentioned, right? Really have a comparable, structured interview process where you make sure you ask the relevant question,
Yes.
where you also make sure that all people involved in the recruiting process from the company side are actually trained in doing so, so that they know how to conduct an interview, that they know how to ask questions, how to evaluate the answer, how to write down the interview evaluation, so that you have a yeah database to evaluate each and every candidate properly, and that you can take a objective decision on the skills, and also that's a tricky one, right? And quite objective decision on the personal fit, right? Because
Yeah.
that's also you can ask and kind of interview towards specific personality traits, right? Am I looking for someone who is a bit more outgoing? Am I looking for someone who is a bit more quiet, right? You will find that out during the interview if you
Right.
ask the right question and if you set it up properly. And you need to be able to do that because you cannot have a team consisting of the same personality type, right? If the team would be just me, a recruiter team, I would start crying and run away because I could not kind of bear working with personalities like me for the whole time, right? So you need to balance it out. You need to have a very diverse team to really create cool products, cool solutions.
Yeah, I think it's very important to have that for like a good working environment, right?
Mm. No.
So, what do you think? Like, has this approach been already initiated by all the recruiters globally, or what's the growth of it, the approach?
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's not common or it's not rolled out to all recruiting teams, right? A
Mm.
lot of teams just lack the tool support to be able to do it. They also lack, let's say, trust by the business to change things, right? If you work in a old mid-sized company, right, that has been around for, let's say, 150 years, it's super hard to change the ways they have been doing stuff.
Right.
And you get frustrated if you want to do something new and you can't, you just forget about it or you move somewhere else. So it's on the rise, I would say, specifically in Germany, where we have a shortage of skilled workers, of very good, let's say, engineers, right? They need to change ways, and if they start changing ways, they actually then also usually adapt a more modern way of doing it because you need to track it. You need to be able to say, it's good to hire globally, right? But if I don't know where to look for specific people, I'm lost again. Engineering is a super example for that because, for instance, most of the French tech companies from the, let's say, early 2000s, 2010s use PHP as a tech stack, whereas Spanish companies don't. So if you want to hire a PHP person in Spain, it doesn't work because they didn't use it back then. And so those are the things you need to know, and those are the things you can track and then put into your forecast model to be able to see where those folks, where you should kind of focus on recruiting on a more international level.
Right. So I think I have just one question for you. Although you've already answered it by mentioning the font style and the font size, but any other tips from your end for candidates? What can they do to get found by recruiters and get
Yeah.
shortlisted? At least
If it's about being found, really maintain a good LinkedIn profile, for instance. Make sure you have all your skills listed there. Also, make sure that you only put the stuff into your CV that you're really good at, right? Again, the example, if you have studied in engineering and that was the only time you worked with Java, don't put it in there because that doesn't qualify you for a Java engineer if you have worked with Python for the rest of your career. So highlight the skills you're really, really good at and the tools you're good at. Don't oversell yourself because that will backfire. On the other hand, don't undersell yourself as well, because then you might fall through the cracks in a way. Because if a recruiter doesn't see that you work with a specific tool, with a specific language, coding language, you will get a rejection. So it needs to be somewhere in the middle, and really, when it comes to applying to a specific role, make sure you, let's say, match the role description for roughly 80%. That's also a huge shout out to all the women applying. You don't need to fit 100% of the job description, because men don't. Everybody, all male applicants do not fit 100%. So forget about that. 80% is more than enough. And the rest, the recruiting team will find out.
Ah, nice. So I think we had a good talk about, the data-driven approach of recruiting, and yeah, because we do have some time constraints, which is why we have to bring the session to an end. But that doesn't mean, we'll never come back with other topics on the same approach in future, right?
Yeah.
So once again, Christian, thank you so much, because your insights have been really valuable, I think, for both sides of the table, right? And it's going to be helpful for organization and as well as for job seekers, right? So I'm probably bridging the gap through this session. And yeah, I guess thank you so much for your participation. And I just wanted to, maybe you could just add something before we wrap up the session, like from your end to all our viewers, like in general, anything that you want to add on.
Thank you. Firstly, thank you for having me. And what I want to add, be bold. Don't let yourself driven away from a job because you think you are not a 100% fit. And one thing I cannot highlight enough, don't think that any AI will reject you. It doesn't.
Thank you so much, Christian. And guys, as I always mention in all of our sessions, if you're a job seeker and looking for a job, please visit our website techjobsfair.com, and then you can see all the events there, both physical and virtual, and you can register yourselves for free. So go get your tickets now, and I'll see you again in the next session. So until next time, have a great day, all of you. And thank you so much, Christian, for joining us.
Thank you, Triti. Bye.
Bye bye.